Attack on Titan Season 3. Was it horribly amazing or wonderfully terrible? So what's up guys, Foxen here. Yeah, unfortunately Attack on Titan Season 3 is now on break. So let's go ahead and talk about how you felt about it. Was this the best Attack on Titan season so far? Before diving into this, just know I will be only talking about the anime up until the Uprising Arc, nothing past it. And surprisingly, I've actually seen some mixed feelings about this. Some common complaints I've seen from some of you and online. Where are all the Titans? This is called Attack on Titan, is it not? And yes, Titans are part of this story, an important part. Although perhaps the English translation for the story has been causing some confusion. Mild spoiler, the original name of the series, Shingeki no Kyojin, is actually a name of something. It's not meant to be a reference to Titans attacking or humanity fighting back. Second issue I've seen, where is all the action? There's way too much talking. I think this actually may be a curse from Attack on Titan Season 1, where the action scenes were elevated drastically in the anime compared to the manga. It might have given some casual viewers the impression that Attack on Titan was your typical action shonen series. Years later, it turns out that it's not. And third major complaint I've seen, which is interesting, that Eren was way too much of a pussy this season. Why is Eren not angry anymore? Oh, a character getting character development. Talk about boring. What I actually found surprising was just how many of you said you actually identified or liked Eren because he was always angry, just like you. I think I've always personally leaned towards being calm myself, so perhaps I can't relate as much. This angry nature of Eren from Season 1 also made Eren seem to me like the standard shonen protagonist. In other words, nothing new or too interesting. No big issue though, the rest of the rich Attack on Titan story made up for that. If anything, now I do have to applaud Isayama for taking this almost generic shonen character and making him into that much more. So for those of you watching, let me ask you, where do you stand on the Uprising Arc? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you have any of the major issues I mentioned above? How does Attack on Titan Season 3 compare to Season 2 or Season 1? And there is a reason I'm asking you this. The Attack on Titan story coming up that's past the second half of Season 3 is very much gonna feel like the Uprising Arc for the Season 3 anime. A close comparison would be Game of Thrones. In other words, Attack on Titan is gonna be getting more complicated, more layered, and of course a lot more political. So if your answer to the stuff before was that you disliked or hated the Uprising Arc, or ranked it lowest in the seasons, this might not be good news for you. Anyway, how does Attack on Titan Season 3 compare to the other seasons? For this, let's first talk about the pacing for the Uprising Arc. The beginning of the Uprising Arc was heavily sped up for the anime version. Attack on Titan Season 3 covers chapters 51 to 52, so 22 chapters more or less. Definitely less when you consider just how much was cut out or condensed. It was as if the Attack on Titan manga got put into a blender. You then got some serving of that Attack on Titan smoothie each week. Even manga readers were anxiously waiting to see how the Titan smoothie tasted that week. And of course for this, there's complaints on both sides. I've actually seen some people still mention that the pacing was super slow, which is kind of ironic. And then you have a lot of manga purists that are hating on this season. So let me mention before going deeper into this, just to make it perfectly clear to you. I don't necessarily believe the anime has to adapt things one for one from the manga. Anime is a completely different medium from the drawn page. This is why there should be some flexibility with how the scenes, the characters, and the story comes to life in animation. So it's important to be open to change. Change has the potential to make something good into something great. Potential here being the key, the opposite is also very much a fact. An amazing manga or novel scene could potentially lose its emotional impact. Characters could come out completely different from the original source, and so on. Now, back to the Uprising Arc in question. Unless you've been living under a rock, you're fully aware about there being drastic changes for the Uprising Arc in Season 3. At minimum, you should have heard about this. I mean hell, I got 12 videos going over all the changes for Season 3, and definitely do check out that series. You may have heard about the reason too. On this, I already have a full video discussing the reasons why, so I'm not going to go into the full details. To oversimplify it, Isayama was not happy with how the Uprising story came out for the early Attack on Titan manga. Around 4 years later, Isayama has both drastically improved as a writer and an artist. And so far there's been tidbits here and there about who had the most say in the changes, whether it was Isayama or the studio. But honestly, you're never going to know the full picture from just this. What is important is that the changes have been completed by now. With all of these changes, the Uprising Arc has become a much tighter story in the anime. Some of the fat has been trimmed, a lot of dialogue has been condensed. And yes, even arguably important scenes have been cut. So first off, I do have to give a huge amount of credit to the positive things that came out from this tightening of the Uprising story. Due to this, I actually found several characters that made much more of an impact on me, when perhaps the impression wasn't as huge or just didn't come across in the manga. A major character of course elevated by this was the Commander Badass himself, Erwin. Oh my god, after that beautiful display at the end of Season 2, the Erwin train kept on steaming forward in Season 3. From Erwin's speech about honoring the Respaws, to displaying this commanding force in the King throne room scene, and even Erwin's talk to Levi in the last episode. Erwin's presence in Season 3 left a deep impact. Definitely can't wait to get some more Susume from Erwin in the next half of Season 3. Next up, second outstanding character, the blonde girl Historia. And yes, this little blonde gave this wonderful performance throughout the season. I could just feel the hate coming from some of you as Historia was buying every single thing Papa Rod was feeding her. Really reminded me of the naive Sansa from Game of Thrones. This tighter Season 3 story also helped lead into Historia's big turning moment on her bastard of a father. The definition of a good girl gone bad here. Historia was freaking done taking crap from people, Eren included. And naturally, Historia was a major player of the season. I mean, she did become Queen Historia after all. In comparison, the manga version felt much less impactful. So making Historia stand out will only help set the stage for future events. And then you got top outstanding character number 3, Commander Pixies. The Attack on Titan anime has done an excellent job in fleshing this old guy out since Season 1. To be honest, Pixies was almost forgettable from the manga counterpart. Now take a look at Pixies in Season 3. Really a night and day difference. Once again, credit to the throne room scene. Pixies was able to shine here wonderfully. By the way, I do have to give an honorable mention to Kenny's blonde buddy. Her name is actually Cavern. I think they might have said it once or twice in the anime. Either way, like I predicted, Cavern became much more of a major player in the series compared to the manga version. Was she actually a major character? No, not really. But Cavern did get added screen time this season. She got much more of a voice, and it really felt like she was the face of the Kenny squad. So excellent job fleshing out this otherwise forgettable minor character in the manga. Alright, so switching it up to a more controversial topic. Let's bring up Kenny Ackerman. This guy is a mixed bag for me. And I do have to admit from the start, perhaps it's due to Kenny having so much of an impact for me from the Kenny manga counterpart. For a good chunk of the Kenny scenes in the anime, sometimes it almost felt like he got thrown into this arc to simply serve as this extension of Levi Ackerman. Of course, there should be some of that, but it shouldn't be most of his purpose. And yes, about purpose, his second purpose. It almost felt like Kenny Ackerman alone was bringing this action element into this arc, which again is both good and bad for this. And who knows, perhaps some of the stronger parts in this arc overshadowed Kenny. This season started off very strong with Kenny Ackerman. Then you kept on getting less and less of him every episode. After you switched back to Eren and Rod's sex dungeon, I was thinking, oh yeah, Kenny is still in this. Yeah, he's a thing. They really made you forget all about him. The biggest problem from anime Kenny might be ultimately what he led up to, which was Kenny's grand dream. Ultimately, it felt like the grand reveal lost some of the weight when he finally found out what the driving force behind Kenny really was. Some of the other outstanding performances, and even the Rod 120-meter Titan might have overshadowed Kenny's big moment. That being said, I really do appreciate the well-crafted action element that Kenny did bring to the arc. For starters, Kenny did get introduced a lot earlier. You even got this enjoyable anime original assault between the two Ackerman in the Season 3 anime. The two Ackerman never actually fought one another in the manga. And a huge credit to Kenny's voice actor as well. Perfectly captured how I imagined Kenny to be portrayed as. Next up, getting to a huge negative with one of the characters. And yes, I have to bring up the Respaws. I'll just say this. I was a huge fan of the Respaws in the manga, especially his talk with Levi on top of the wall. He's basically been reduced to the very minimal for the Attack on Titan Season 3 anime, supposedly to tighten up the story. I've since gotten past this, but this was a very early complaint of mine for Season 3. Let me know if any of you felt the same way. Alright, so switching it up, let's actually talk about the Season 3 animation. Specifically, the change in animation style. And perhaps I'll do a full video talking in depth about this. For now, let's discuss this in some detail. And I've actually seen pretty mixed feelings about this from some of you. Definitely voice your own feelings about this down below too. If you actually look back to Attack on Titan Season 1, the whole Season 1 project was a complete mess. In case you're unaware, a lot of the animation had to be fixed or completely redrawn for the Blu-ray release. Attack on Titan Season 2 then saw this massive improvement with the Attack on Titan animation. Of course, some of you still weren't fans of this simply due to it being a change. And to be fair, I could kinda see where you're coming from. Ideally, I would have preferred the Attack on Titan anime to at least have this consistent look throughout the series and characters. I really thought that might have been the case after seeing the beautiful animation for Season 2. However, then you got into Attack on Titan Season 3. This is a completely mixed bag. I previously made a video on certain scenes that the anime could really vastly improve on for the Uprising Arc. And Attack on Titan Season 3 does have excellent examples that really fleshed out the series. A couple of these examples include the Levi chase scene from the Kenny Ackerman squad. The animator that did this actually tweeted out how it took him a month just for this chase scene alone. The Kenny versus Levi battle scene in the Crystal Titan Cave. Like mentioned before, these two close Ackermen never even battled in the manga. And the final moment scene of Historia slashing that Titan chunk of the raw Titan. There's a lot more examples like this, but let me cut off the list right here. Now, for all these amazing animation scenes from Season 3, we also have one counterpart where you could say the animation was lagging, or a lot more effort could have really been put into this. Let me give you 3 examples for this too. Eren's Titan father Grisha versus the Frida Titan. Considering this is one of the few Titan on Titan battles in the Uprising Arc, I really thought they would go all out on this. Instead, it almost seemed like they went the opposite direction. The original manga scene was even censored with Titan's theme. Why? And then the second example, which is really casting this big umbrella on a lot of the censorship that was done to tone down the scenes for the anime, especially in the first half. And to be fair, I'm not really a fan of gore, but some of the scenes really lost their impact when you strip the characters of their fangs. A good example of this was the 50 Shades of Hanji dungeon. I could think of like 10 different ways of making this scene without making it go into the gore territory, and still make it impactful. At the very minimum, you're telling me you can't show Levi punching Sanis? Not even once or twice? That's not even gore at that point. And then the third one, which is a mixed bag, the raw 120-meter Titan. I've seen a lot of you raging on hating the CG used for this, something about it looking like the PlayStation 1. And personally, I've always been more lenient on this type of stuff, so I'm kinda undecided on it now. However, the following episode showed that they could have done this all without using CG. I just love that horrifying face that they ended up for this faceless monster Titan. However, other body shots could have really been improved. Let's see how they handled the return of the Colossal Titan in 2019. Next up, let's talk about something really ugly, which is how the Wit Studio handled the Attack on Titan Season 3 news, or lack thereof. And yes, years down the line, I think a lot of us will forget about this, but right now we're here. Of course, none of us are inside the studio or TV network, which means we could only speculate about the reasons why. Was it the decision of the Wit Studio? Was it a contract of the TV network? Was it something else? At this point, who knows, but it did happen. I think there's a good chance that if Attack on Titan Season 3 did not air in this bigger network, and instead on standard anime channels, then this news about it being split would have been given out super early on. And who knows, maybe they wouldn't even have been taking a break. They definitely wouldn't have taken a week off during the past typhoon. Oh, and talking about the typhoon and Japan, I've actually seen this kind of dumb rumor going around that the area got hit a lot harder than expected. And this being the reason why Attack on Titan Season 3 is being delayed until next year. In case you've been misled into believing this, let me completely kill this off. The Wit Studio is under 30 minutes from where I live, and trust me, we're all doing fine here in Japan. That typhoon is in our memories now. It didn't cause any drastic, long-lasting damage that hasn't already been resolved. Anyway, getting into Attack on Titan Season 3 overall, definitely let me know which season you loved the most. And perhaps I'm not gonna say a popular opinion, but except for the animation, I definitely preferred Attack on Titan Season 3 over Season 2. It is harder to compare it to Attack on Titan Season 1, since Season 1 pretty much set up the entire story, and that thing was twice the length of Season 3. On the other hand, Season 2 and Season 3 are a lot more comparable. Season 2 really felt like this middle season that was helping to connect into the larger story introduced in Attack on Titan Season 3. Ironically, Attack on Titan Season 3 now feels similar to that too, since we're only talking about the Uprising Arc, for now. Attack on Titan Season 3 had some very strong character development for almost every single character. That includes Eren and his breakdown in the Crystal Cave. I'm sorry if you didn't like Crybaby Eren. Historia going from this lost broken girl into this very strong leader that ain't need no man. Erwin with his motivation for fighting Titans fully fleshed out, or mostly anyway. Levi Ackerman with his horrible upbringing fully revealed, plus connection with Uncle Kenny. Armin with his continuing developing mindset about who the good guys are in this world. And even Mikasa, which I do admit was smaller. She has however come around to the idea of leaving Eren to himself. and Mikasa really should start getting closer to other female buddies like Historia. And yes, even Horseboy had his little moment with Marlo and Hitch. This is why Attack on Titan Season 3 is going to serve as this key important point for the story, especially with the future events coming. It's going to go down in history as one of those seasons we keep looking back into. There are so many Attack on Titan fans that claim the next arc to be the best part of the Attack on Titan story. But let's be perfectly honest here. It wouldn't be crap if it wasn't for these key character moments in the previous arc. It would be mindless fighting or action like your typical shonen series. Like mentioned before, if you thought this Uprising arc was boring, well, better get used to it since Season 4 is going to be similar. Anyway, more important, let me hear from you now. How much did you love or hate Attack on Titan Season 3? Which Attack on Titan season was the best in your opinion? And where do you think Season 3 was lacking compared to the other seasons? Was it the change in animation style? And what were some of the standout moments for you this season? Anyway, definitely give a close thumbs up and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, I put out 5+ anime videos here every week. Don't forget, it doesn't matter that the Attack on Titan anime is on break. I will continue to have weekly Attack on Titan videos. You could also enjoy my weekly breakdowns on SAO Season 3 Alicization on the weekends. So hit bell notifications, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.